Good evening. Good evening. And thank you for joining me on this night of little sleep and many spirits. We're going to be making some Halloween-themed cocktails tonight. I've got 2 items on the menu, and they're both sort of riffs on traditional cocktails. So let's start with the first one. This is a drink I'm calling the Jack-o'-lantern. It's sort of similar to an old-fashioned build, but you can see right away it's going to be a little different. We're building this in a shaker rather than in the glass. That's because one of the ingredients kind of needs to be shaken just to get it mixed in there. We will start the same way we'd start an old-fashioned, though, with the Angostura bitters. 3 dashes is sort of standard, but this drink ends up being really sweet, so I think a little extra spice from the bitters might be helpful here. So that's 6. Yeah, we'll go ahead and just double it. And here's where we go into a different direction than the old-fashioned. Generally, you'd want to use some sort of simple syrup as your sweetener. We're going to use maple syrup because it fits the season, right? So we'll take an ounce of maple syrup. Measure out, add to our shaker there. I know this syrup is going to get all over my desk at some point. Now we'll kind of come back to old-fashioned territory. We're going to add 2 ounces of bourbon. Try to avoid these syrup drips getting everywhere. So measure 2 ounces of bourbon. And add to the shaker. We also want to add another seasonal ingredient. That's 2 tablespoons of this pumpkin puree. This is why the shaker is necessary, just to get this stuff kind of mixed thoroughly. All right, that's good enough for me. Next up, we'll throw in a cube of ice. We're going to put ice in the glass anyway, but it doesn't hurt to get it cold while it's in the shaker. Go ahead and close the gate and shake her up. Alright, that's good and cold. Take a rocks glass, add a nice big whiskey rock. Not actually a whiskey rock, like a whiskey stone. I don't know, I've never really gotten on board with that trend. But a nice big cube of ice works great. Next up, we'll strain our mixture in there. I'm going to go ahead and double strain because, again, this pumpkin puree is pretty thick stuff. Let's see what happens. Looks pretty cool. All right. And eventually that'll all strain in there, we hope. Sure. All right, so that's essentially it. We just need to add a garnish. Now, traditionally for an old-fashioned, kind of an orange peel would be the right thing to do, and we can certainly do that here. So I'll go ahead and take a peel of orange. And we can express it into the drink as well. Get some of that orange oil up in there. Might as well even get it on the rim. Let's take this orange and very artistically put it onto a cocktail skewer. And also add a stick of cinnamon. Careful doing this part. You could very easily skewer yourself. Oh, and I broke it in two. Let's try another stick of cinnamon. I guess you have to find one that's like a suitable candidate for this. This one should work. Oh, easy. All right, we made it work. And there it is, the jack-o'-lantern. So we've made our drink. Let's see if it's worth a damn. Of course, there's that orange on the nose. That's lovely. Well, so the whiskey gets a little buried under all the other flavors, but it's a holiday drink, so I think that's okay. There's a lot of pumpkin. That's cool, and it makes this really hazy effect, which is kind of fun. The maple syrup is very sweet. I'm generally not a huge fan of an overly sweet cocktail, but being a holiday-themed sort of cocktail, it works. It's only once a year, right? You could potentially tone down the maple syrup a little bit if you want to make this at home. But yeah, overall, this is pretty cool. I recommend you try it. The jack-o'-lantern. Next up, if you're not into the brown liquors, we've got a clear liquor drink for you. So this one, I'm calling it the Vampire's Kiss. Wait a minute. So it's sort of a riff on like a gin sidecar, otherwise referred to as a white lady, which is already kind of scary, I know. So we want to start in our shaker. And this time, why don't we start with the spirit? I'm using Plymouth Gin today. If you haven't tried this, I recommend it. It's one of my favorites. We'll measure out 2 ounces of gin into the shaker. Then we want an ounce of Cointreau. You can substitute some other orange liqueur, but really to make the sidecar it should be a Cointreau. So there's an ounce of it in the shaker. We need some lemon juice. So I always go for fresh squeezed, and you should too if you can. I have some here. So let's do that. Now I didn't bring my lemon squeezer to the set, so I'm just gonna eyeball it. This should be half an ounce of lemon juice. And we'll say that's half an ounce. And do measure at home, it makes a difference. Now this next part is optional if it makes you squeamish or if your diet does not allow it. But I recommend doing it using an egg white. So to do that, we're gonna crack the egg, but we want to catch the yolk. And just let the white through our fingers. Somehow. It's going, I swear. And I broke the yolk, so I'm gonna get rid of that. But yeah, that worked. Yes. Yes, that worked. Now, here is where it'll get a little different from the traditional sidecar. We're gonna add, mostly for color, but also it's gonna add a cool flavor. some homemade Grenadine Syrup. I'm going to go ahead and add an ounce of it. See what happens. I made this syrup extra thick because my initial plan was to rim the glass with it and make it look kind of like blood. But I couldn't reliably make that work. So we're going to put it in the drink. Now, we want to dry shake this. Don't put any ice in your shaker yet. If you do, this won't work. This is also... dry shaking is where there's a major chance of stuff coming out of your shaker. So just to be sure, because I don't want to ruin my vampire cravat, I might do something like this. And we shake. Okay, so we've shaken it without ice. We'll do the same thing again with ice. Add that. Try to avoid it all splashing out at you. Alright, proper way to serve this beverage will be in a coupe glass. And I will strain because I don't want that cube in the glass. There's no room for it. Let's see what happened. Look at that. So I gotta admit, it's not as red as I thought it would be. But I'm okay with that. I think that's a nice color. And maybe to get that little sense of red, like the blood red, we will add one of these guys. The Vampire's Keys. Vampire's Keys. So, tasting notes. Let's see how we did. There's a little more going on. The last one was sweet and pumpkin. In this, there's the lemon and that kind of sweet but also dry Cointreau. The gin, of course, is a lot more forward than than the whiskey was in the other drink. So overall, it's more of a dry drink, which I tend to like more. But that homemade grenadine is coming through. It sweetens it up plenty. And also there's that beautiful head of foam on the top. It's like almost like velvety. I like this one because I am a vampire. So if you enjoyed this edition of Office Hours with Hunter Dahlen, where I introduced these two spooky season cocktails, please like the video, share the video, and subscribe to the channel. If you feel like donating to the cause and supporting the channel monetarily, there will be a link to the Patreon in the description. Otherwise, happy Halloween!